Good evening and welcome to the City of Carpinteria Coastal Land Use Plan / General Plan Update Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Roy Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Jane Benefield,
Here.
Commissioner Catherine Salant. All present.
Thank you. All right, now's the time on the agenda for public comment on items not on our agenda, but still within the purview of the Coastal Land Use Plan / General Plan Update Committee, not the City of Carpinteria, but just the committee. So if anybody has any comments for the General Plan Committee, and, yes? Welcome, Amrita.
Thank you. Thank you for finally starting this process again.
Mike.
It says it's green. Oh, now it's darker green. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, I would like to suggest that if the government in Carpinteria shall be open, honest, and equitable, and shall encourage to the fullest extent possible public participation in the decision-making process, which is the mission of the City of Carpinteria, I would suggest that the ad hoc committee consider putting on some well-respected people on the committee who are residents rather than just members of the Planning Commission and the City Council. And somebody like Gail Marshall or Mike Wondolowski, somebody who's knowledgeable about it and who's interested and cares about the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close with that public comment period, and I'll ask staff what would be involved in doing what she suggests, because it does sound like a good idea. We had that one time, not on this committee, but 25 years ago.
Several ways to do it.
Mayor Clark, we can look into this. I know for this particular exercise, because the general plan update was initially sort of a narrowly focused task, kind of more of a cleanup and refinement of our existing general plan. We didn't convene, this larger sort of community visioning exercise and ad hoc committee type thing like you would do for a comprehensive general plan. But it's something we can take a look at and see if there's a way to incorporate, some kind of an ad hoc committee made up of citizens that could help advise on the general plan update, if that's, to your committee's liking.
I don't know, what does everybody think?
I don't.
I make a motion that we do that.
Well, we have to.
Do we have to have a discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have to see what's involved, and it's a decision of the city council. So it has to go back to the city council, and then,
Well,
Oh, my goodness.
and then,
Okay.
so, but Jane has a different viewpoint.
Yeah, I don't think you need another committee. I think, you can come to the meetings and you can make your needs and wants known. And it's very hard with a general plan to just start. You have to have something to show people, even you serious people. Oh, you have to react to it, and we aren't to that point yet. We haven't got anything to look at. So I think it's too soon.
My-
But I don't disagree that we need people on the committee that are in tune, but we are all residents and people who give a shit about Carpinteria, so you're not underrepresented. Anyway, I think you should think about the administration of all that. Okay,
Well, can we look into it? And
yeah.
I think it would have to come back to the city council.
We can certainly take a
when
look
you're-
at
when
it
you're finished.
and research it with the attorneys and get some direction from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
council.
yeah, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we have three main items on our agenda, and we're gonna,
Mayor Clark, before you continue, we do have a Zoom speaker for
we have a
another
Zoom
public
speaker.
comment.
Oh, my goodness, great.
Patrick O'Connor, I'm going to unmute you now.
Good afternoon, good evening. This is Patrick. Thanks for having me on Zoom. So I just wanted to point out there is an existing committee. It's called the Development Review Committee. That's a joint committee of the Planning Commission and ARB, but it's probably relevant to this. So you might consider that existing committee to support what was suggested. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the rest of the agenda now. And we have 3 items, and we'll take your public comment at the end of them, because they all kind of flow together, as you'll see. So the first one is the overview of the coastal land use plan, general plan, update process, and proposed schedule.
Great, thank you, Mayor Clark and committee members. We are really excited to be here, kicking off this process and getting some momentum again. Let me start by introducing who we are. So first, I'll talk about our CDD team. I'm Mindy Fogg, the principal planner for long-range planning, and here with me is Megan Musoff, also with long-range planning, and our director of CDD, Nick Bobroff. Is it?
Should be showing.
It should be. Make sure. All right. And I also want to introduce our consultant team from WSP, who's working behind the scenes with us on all of the general plan documents, maps, elements. We have, first off on Zoom, Erica Leachman with WSP, and we'll see if she can unlock her video and jump on here with us. We're having a bit of a technical difficulty.
There we go.
There we go.
I can hear you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi, Erica. Thank you.
That was fun.
Oh, it's
That was
because I'm
fleeting.
talking. When I'm talking, it comes up. Erica, one more time.
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name's Erica Leachman.
Also on Zoom, we have Nick Meisinger. Nick, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Hi there, everyone. Pleasure to be with you this evening. Look forward to getting this process back underway.
Great.
Hi, Nick.
And then also here in the room with us is Taylor Lane with WSP.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
And of course, we have our committee here. We're very grateful that you made time for this. We hope to have semi-regular monthly meetings to update you and keep the momentum going. And as it shows on here on this slide, a big purpose of this committee is to advise us and making sure that we are going in the right direction and not and that we don't find out at the end of the process that we are going the wrong direction. So we hope to get your feedback throughout these committee meetings and also hear from the public. And in addition to what you heard on the comments today earlier, we also have much more public outreach ahead of us as well. So one of the things we will bring back to you is the public outreach plan and how we will be maximizing the feedback that we get from the residents and the general public. So our agenda this evening, first, a quick overview of the process and the schedule, and Erica's team is going to walk us through these things. Then following along with our staff report that we posted to you, how the general plan will be organized, some information about the SB CAG new data that they're collecting, a little bit about how we're doing the coastal hazards review, and some lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we'll end with a discussion of the introductory chapter that we attached to our staff report. And of course, we'll have public input. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Leachman, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Mindy, so much. And Good evening, committee members. I'm so glad to be here tonight. I wanted to quickly just introduce us. We may be familiar faces to you. I know we have some familiar faces on this committee. But I wanted to let you know that the name WFD may be unfamiliar, but we're the same wood team that has been with the city since day one. So just for context, we're the same group that's kicked off the project. For us, it started in 2017, the effort to update the city's coastal land use plan and general plan. But that effort initially began in 2015 when the city undertook and initiated the project. So this has been a long time coming, and we're so glad to be at this point, to be returning to the update committee, bringing up to speed with the work that has been completed to date, what is on the table coming up in the next few months going into the summer, and then the overall picture for the remainder of the project. But I think what would be best is to start with a little bit of background, just to refresh and remind everybody of where we came from to get to this point today. So far in this project, beginning, like I said, in 2017, the project has been informed by a robust engagement program and outreach program. Our community engagement program involved wide-reaching and
Erica,
diverse.
can I interrupt you for a second? We're getting some distortion on our end, so
Yes.
Very much.
hold on just a moment.
Okay.
You're not distorted. It's the thing that's distorted.
Yeah, it's really distorted. It's
It's
hard
hard
to
to
understand it.
Understand, yeah.
It's not a hearing aid issue.
No.
I apologize, everyone. That might have been coming from my end. Is that better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much better.
Thank
Oh,
you,
wonderful.
Erica. That is much better.
Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry. I should have checked my audio settings before the meeting. I'm so sorry about that. I just switched to a different microphone. I think that corrected the problem. Okay, great. Well, let me back up really quick and just go over a couple points real quick. So looking back in our process to date, beginning in 2017, one of the major first efforts that the city undertook was a robust and diverse outreach program. Our public outreach and engagement program involved a variety of tools to engage with the city of Carpinteria and ultimately the Carpinteria planning area as a whole to understand the context and the needs for the city in its setting along the coast. Our engagement toolbox included a variety of workshops, both general outreach workshops and then some targeted workshops to pull the community relative to some new topics that the city desires to bring into the general plan. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But the workshops were diverse and catered to involvement from all neighborhoods and sectors of the community. We also engaged with public surveys and a series of stakeholder and advisory committee meetings, update committee meetings, to frame the update, target our updated goals and needs, invent and create new programs, development standards that would live in the general plan and ultimately become part of the implementation program for the general plan and the local coastal program. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that content later, but wanted to refresh that this project where we're picking up now has been informed by several cycles and years of input and engagement with the community that is informing our process these days as we go forward. In addition, several new technical analyses were completed as part of the initial work on the general plan. Most notably were technical studies of sea level rise and coastal hazards, or related to sea level rise, within the city. You might recall, for those that were involved with the project at the time, and then of course currently, is sea level rise modeling is a regional exercise. It's something that really manifests from a statewide or a region-wide basis. So taking the effort to understand the best science and the projections for sea level rise hazards and coastal hazards within the city of Carpinteria was an important step along the way. So that work was completed. We also undertook a detailed study of community health to inform our new sections of the general plan addressing community well-being and health. And last but not least, evaluating and remapping environmentally sensitive habitat area within the city, getting a fresh understanding of where that potential resource exists within the city to better inform land use and development planning as part of the general plan. So with that brief overview, where the project, what we were able to complete was an administrative draft, a complete administrative draft of the updated coastal land use plan and general plan. That through that process, one unique step that was made was some deep work and involvement with Coastal Commission staff on the administrative policies, goals, development standards within the administrative draft to ensure that the drafting of the document was incorporating that foresight from the Coastal Commission and would help ensure acceptance of the project going forward. We also reviewed several elements and draft sections of the working draft, of the admin draft with your committee, and had that feedback into that process. But you may recall that the last time we brought this committee together was in February 2020. That was the last time that the group met in person, and at the time the news was all about this new pandemic that had hit our state and our community. And by the time of our last scheduled meeting in March, the state had put in pandemic lockdowns, and this project essentially was put on hold without the ability to meet, and with the need to refocus city resources on pandemic response. This project was put on a shelf and has reemerged currently after the pandemic and with a renewed focus. So that brings us up to speed. Let's talk about what we have on the table going forward. Go to the next slide. Through this planning process and what we're looking forward to working with you in the next coming months is some of the key issues that we know about. I mentioned two of the things that were new, that were developed specifically for this update process, are two brand new elements that haven't been adopted previously within the city. The first element is the community health element, which focuses on the importance of active living, access to medical and healthcare resources within the community, and also access to nutrition and nutritional foods and local foods. So that element touches on those topics and then also brings in policies related to air quality and overall health within the community. The other new element is coastal resiliency, which builds on the research and the data developed in the 2018 Sea Level Rise Vulnerability and Adaptation Plan that was prepared as part of this project, and uses that information to guide policy recommendations and planning recommendations to account for future hazards that may be exacerbated by sea level rise. Other new topics that have arisen that we knew about at the time in 2020, but have really come to fruition over the last several years, is the imperative to plan for transportation relative to vehicle miles traveled. So we'll get into this when we review the circulation element, but the metrics and the approach to circulation and transportation planning have changed pretty dramatically since 2020. And part of that is analyzing impacts related to traffic using the metric of vehicle miles traveled. In addition to that, the circulation element is reviewing the roadway classification system. That's one topic that this committee was in the middle of talking about when the pandemic struck. So we'll be returning to that update and reviewing that as part of the circulation element. Additional key issues relate to land use designations and overlays for mixed use development and the need for additional housing. One thing that's important to note is that the housing element is not part of this project. That's, as you will likely know, that the housing element has been processed and is on a separate track from the rest of the general plan. Statutorily under state law, the housing element is required to be updated every 8 years, so it has its own regulatory environment and it is processed independently from this project. That being said, the housing element does relate to land use recommendations, planning, the land use map, et cetera, which we are reviewing as part of this project. So understanding that relationship will be important going forward. Additionally, this update allows us to review public facilities, utilities, and notably water supply. Coming out of a multi-year drought gives us a lot of data and information and a refreshed understanding about water supply constraints and where and how we may need to plan adequately for water in coordination with our local district to ensure water sustainability in the long term. I mentioned coastal hazards planning, and also we'll come back on this specifically, but other planning efforts in the city have helped bolster our understanding of coastal hazards within the city and current and best science and practices to address that. So we'll come back on that, including an overview of the city's local hazard mitigation plan. And last but not least, an ongoing conversation and an imperative to consider community design and support for the city of Carpinteria's identity as a small coastal beach town, and making sure that that objective, that identity rings true through all of these issue areas as we're going forward. You can go to the next slide. Great, so let's look ahead a little bit. You'll see here we are in spring 2024. And wanting to acknowledge that this is the first meeting of a renewed series of outreach meetings that our team will be assisting the city with to re-engage the community, refresh our key issues, make sure that our draft updated general plan and coastal land use plan meets our current objectives and the community's current vision, that we haven't missed anything in the hiatus that we've had to take in the last couple of years. What that program will involve is engagement with this committee, starting tonight, and then a series of public workshops and stakeholder engagement. In the coming months, we'll be returning to your committee several times to review the emerging draft plan, talk about key issues, and use this as an important tool for community engagement. Looking ahead to the summer, the intent is to publish the draft. And for the committee to say, we need something to look at. This will be our opportunity to see the plan as a whole, see how the draft policies have come together, and the updated setting information that's reflective of current conditions as a basis for future planning. Some key topics that you'll see reflected in the updated draft CLUP GP include sea level rise vulnerabilities and adaptation strategies, updated land use and development strategies consistent with overall city goals for neighborhood character, community character, et cetera. We'll be conducting a water supply assessment so we understand our long-term standing for water supply going forward. And then, as I mentioned, a refreshed view of transportation planning using VMT metrics and modeling. Just to be specific, we have a transportation sub-consultant on our team, Farron Pierce, who is assisting with modeling for VMT in the city so that we have a highly local understanding of the city's VMT and now and in the future with implementation of the project. So what's coming up in going into fall, after we have our draft plan, we have a project description, and our team will be helping the city prepare the program EIR for the update. We'll be looking at impacts across all of the California Environmental Quality Act's thresholds and requirements, everything from coastal hazards to visual impacts, biological resources, cultural resources, tribal cultural resources, understanding the impacts of land use and population growth, and then also considering alternatives to that project where the EIR can be used as a tool to explore trade-offs between impacts and approaches. With the information that's published as part of the EIR, the city will have what it needs to finalize the updated general plan and coastal land use plan and consider that update through a variety of decision makers, including this committee, Planning Commission, City Council, and because the city lies in the coastal zone, the approval of the California Coastal Commission. Ultimately, the goal is through adoption to create the implementation plan, which will create changes to the city's regulatory environment as implementation of the general plan going forward. Great, and go to the next slide. Terrific. So as this is our first meeting since February 2020, what we wanted to bring forward tonight was a series of updated information, some fresh information to the committee, bring the introduction to the updated general plan to you, and start to discuss some of the key issues that we may want to infuse into the updated general plan over the next couple months. From our staff memo, we highlighted a couple of things that we wanted to draw your attention to as new information that relates to the city and may be useful and helpful as we go forward with this planning process. The first new data that we wanted to share with you comes from SBCAG, and it's specifically the Understanding Regional Travel Patterns Report. It was released just a couple months ago in January, And it's a really interesting report because it studies transportation and travel throughout Santa Barbara County and regionally, including adjacent counties, to understand where people live, where they're going, why they're going there, and who those people are, using what we call big data, what SBK calls big data. Big data is real information, such as the locations of cell phones and internet use data, real demographic data, updated, fresh census data, and all of that comes together to model travel patterns in a highly accurate way. So in doing so, we learned some pretty interesting information about Santa Barbara County, and then as a subset of this region, the city of Carpinteria specifically. We do want to talk about specifically about the city, but we also wanted to highlight just a couple really interesting facts that came out of this report. First of all, just some of the things that we all sensed were true ended up being true. So for example, pre-pandemic, the vehicle miles traveled in the county have decreased significantly since then. They've decreased by about 9% compared to pre-pandemic conditions. And that's chalked up a lot to remote working conditions. Remote work surged by more than 150% since 2019 in the county, with an average of 25,000 about individuals now working from home. And so this represents a change from 6% of the total workforce in the county to roughly 15% as of 2022. So a pretty dramatic change. Kind of nice to see the data and confirm what we all knew and kind of felt. So that's interesting. One other interesting fact is that what we also know is that people travel to Santa Barbara County and city of Carpinteria from Ventura County, but not as much as we all sense necessarily. Approximately just shy of 40,000 Ventura County residents travel to Santa Barbara County on an average a weekday, and only about a third of those trips are made for work. And what's also interesting is that more than half of those commutes are associated with households with incomes greater than $100,000 annually. So it demonstrates that the demographics and the travel patterns of out-of-county commuters is a little bit different than what we had presumed in models. So pretty interesting data regionally. What's also interesting is the data that was collected specifically for the city. So some of the key big data travel patterns that this report provides for the city is, first of all, that about 40% of the trips that originate from the city, work trips, stay in the city. So those are employees that live and work in Carpinteria. And that means about 60% of those trips leave the city. And that mainly those trips stay on the South Coast, including city of Santa Barbara, Montecito, even Toro Canyon, city of Goleta. So what was a main takeaway is that a lot of the South Coast trips stay on the South Coast. May not stay in your city, but the trip distance is actually relatively short. Most of those trips from Carpinteria use Highway 101, which we could assume, but also 150 and 192 as alternate routes. They're all shared pretty proportionally as far as preferred routes for folks, depending on what their ultimate destination is. And what's also interesting is that about 70% of the trips that come to the city for work are from other South Coast destinations as well. So folks that live in Santa Barbara or Goleta or Montecito and come to the city for work, a lot of those trips are from the South Coast and don't come from more distant areas such as Buellton or Santa Maria, et cetera. So interesting factoids. We wanted to give you a snapshot today, but it's a really interesting report overall. And then some of these indicators about the city give us some guidance about what we may want to focus on to affect those travel patterns with circulation planning and land use planning. Great, so we can go to the next slide. Great, so the other topic that we wanted to report back on tonight relates to coastal hazards planning. As I mentioned, as part of this effort, the city prepared the Sea Level Rise Vulnerability and Adaptation Plan, which helped inform the development of the coastal resiliency element. Subsequent to the creation of that draft element, the city also undertook two critical projects and very interesting and relevant projects to this planning effort. First and foremost, the city worked as a participating agency with the County of Santa Barbara in updating the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. What that means is that the city prepared its local hazard mitigation plan as an annex to the county's multi-jurisdictional plan. So in 2022, the city completed a comprehensive update of the local hazard mitigation plan, and it's been certified. So that's really great news because we have the latest and greatest hazard setting, vulnerability analysis, and also a comprehensive mitigation program recently adopted for the city that gives us cues about where implementation programs should be focused on to address specifically coastal hazards. What's also interesting about that project is that the city incorporates the local hazard mitigation plan by reference into this. That's an important relationship because the local hazard mitigation plan is required to be updated every 5 years. So it's the living document that keeps the mitigation strategy for hazards within the city fresh and renewed and consistent with state and federal law. So that's been completed. A couple of the mitigation programs that you'll see in the hazard mitigation plan include the continuation of the winter beach berm program, which you can see a snapshot here of the berm, which provides protection of the shoreline development on City Beach. In addition to some other programs to bolster coordination with county flood control and also pursue an ongoing management of a sediment management program to encourage beach nourishment and provide sediment to implement programs such as the winter beach berm. So that comprehensive set of mitigations is on the books and something that we will be referring to and counting on as part of the general plan update. One other important project that was completed in the interim last couple of years was actually envisioned as an implementation measure of the general plan, and that was the creation of a shoreline dune management plan for City Beach and potentially a longer extent. The city undertook an investigation and a planning effort to identify options for beach nourishment and a potential natural dune system to provide sustainable management of the beach and ultimately shoreline protection in a form that would be compatible with the existing environment and provide those protection benefits. So that program was completed. It's also on the books and something that we can look to as part of the update. Terrific. And so one other topic we wanted to bring up tonight, and we've talked a lot about the pandemic, and with this at this point, as we've moved back into a new normal, we're in a place of reflection for the general plan. Through that process, we've learned a lot about potential vulnerabilities related to public health and the pandemic. You'll see that reflected in the update of the local hazard mitigation plan as well. But some of the topics that touch down with what we're working on, specifically related to the community health element, is the availability and the sufficiency of community health services and emergency response. And then related to land use and planning, the permanent increased demand for outdoor spaces, including parks and recreation, trails through the pandemic. I don't know if everybody feels the same way, but that built-in need to go hiking and need to be in the outdoors, that's been a permanent change for a lot of folks. And so we've seen an uptick in demand for recreation, outdoor recreation. The same can be true for dining and gathering spaces. But you can see here, our temporary approaches to create outdoor dining spaces have become a permanent demand for outdoor dining spaces, and then also an ongoing demand for car-free spaces to, again, encourage outdoor gathering spaces. The other thing, as I mentioned, is that we've seen commute pattern changes, measurable permanent commute pattern changes that can influence our approach to active transportation planning and multimodal transportation planning to support a change in how people get to work and home. Great. So with that broad overview of some of the key topics that we're thinking about and hoping to discuss with you tonight and on an ongoing basis, we did also want to draw your attention to the working draft introduction. This is our first section that we wanted to bring forth to the committee and give you some context and a feel for what the document is looking like, how it's shaping up, how it's organized. In this chapter of the general plan, you'll see several topics. First of all, an updated and refreshed city setting and some generalized data about the city, population, size, et cetera. We also want to make clear that the introduction is where we set our community goal. You can see it on the screen here, and this is something that guides the city's approach to the implementation and the design of each element going forward. The general plan is organized into 10 sections, so 10 elements plus the housing element. As I mentioned, the housing element is part of the general plan under state law, but since it's governed separately, it's treated separately and has a different approach to planning for it. Key issues that are identified in the introduction include the Coastal Act and how it applies to the city given the city's location within the coastal zone, and also general plan law, which sets out our requirements for a sufficient general plan. And then last but not least, a description of the approach to the California Environmental Quality Act for the program. It hasn't happened yet, but we have a good placeholder to explain and identify those key issues and how the EIR informed the planning process going forward. Okay, next slide. Great. So where we want to be tonight is focused on discussion and focus on next steps and key issues going forward. So we wanted to bring forward a few focus questions for tonight and invite the committee to discuss these questions and others as they come up. But some of the things that as staff and your consultants in this process that we're hoping to talk about is what citywide planning issues have emerged since the last time we met? Are there things that we don't know about, things that we should be focused on now? Or has the focus on issues from 2019, 2020 shifted in ways that we want to be able to account for? Also, what key issues could benefit at this point from some focused public input during upcoming workshops, as we're working as a team to develop those agendas and the approaches and the tools that we'll use for community engagement, especially given this stage in the process. Going to the community would be most valuable if we're targeting key issues that we need public input in or on to build and refine the recommendations that we have currently. And also for tonight, we welcome any input and feedback on that draft introduction that we shared as part of the packet. And as a preview of what's to come for the general plan, we wanted to, of course, invite your feedback, ideas, input on the overall process. Great. Next slide.
Do you want to leave this slide up for now?
Sure,
Erica?
yeah, absolutely.
And because the last slide is basically our conclusion, so maybe we could go ahead and see if there's any immediate feedback from your committee members and even open it up for public comment after that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or feedback from the group up here? I got one thing. A new issue facing the city is how our general plan is not objective enough in reviewing some types of projects. And are we going to be including that effort in revising the general plan is to give us some sharper tools?
Thank you, yes. We are looking at that, and we need to look at that more closely.
One of the things that's appeared is parklets and traffic patterns have changed a lot, people working at home, all which was said, but it affects the land use. And, oh God, there was something I was going to say, but it goes away so fast. Oh, sorry. I can't think of it.
Well, since the last time we met, since 2020, this state housing mandates is going to be a conversation that we will be having for many years, not just for the next cycle, but the cycle is many. So this document is important that we be more objective going forward so we can plan better.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just jumping in. You're in charge? You the chair?
Go ahead, jump in.
Okay. Yeah, what he said, the state laws have changed a great deal for us, for what we are supposed to do. And, that's such a battle. I don't know. It kind of negates all things we're doing. So I don't know how we're going to handle that, but that's an issue.
Is this a time to comment on the community goal?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, when I read it, there's one phrase in here that is troubling to me, and I realize that this community goal, as you have it here, is exactly what was in the original plan that was drafted in 2003, and we know the world has changed a lot since then. And where it says, it's family-oriented residential neighborhoods. And I feel family-oriented there is a phrase that's really loaded, and I feel that in Carpinteria, we pride ourselves for our economic diversity, for our diversity of households, for our diversity of different nationalities and different cultures and all this stuff. And family-oriented to me just doesn't include all that. I think we need I agree that it's overwhelmingly residential neighborhoods, which are themselves quite diverse, but we need a better descriptive term.
Thank you for that. We'll definitely work on that and bring that back to you.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public, and I've got a speaker slip from Mike Wondolowski. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Carpinteria Valley Association, and actually I want to lead off with a different comment on the community goal. The one wording that was changed from the previous document is very good, changing our citizens to our community. That's a good change. An even better change would be to change it to all our residents. Here's why. The community is made up of residents, non-residents who are employees or own businesses locally, and tourists. That's the community. The city is made up solely of its residents and responsible to its residents, not the tourists, not the business owners, not the workers who don't live here. Only the residents' interests should be the metric for decisions made. The attention to these other groups of people is relevant only in how it affects the residents. The residents benefit from a healthy local economy. The residents benefit from some of the tourist drawing amenities. That's great, but it's not for the interest of the tourists, it's for the interest of the residents. So we recommend that the community goal reference all our residents rather than the community. And a separate comment regarding the SBCAG data, very interesting report. I'm glad that the staff brought that up and put it in front of the committee. It's listed as being relevant to the circulation element, which it indeed is, but it's also very key data about the jobs housing imbalance locally and regionally that I've been harping on for years now. I pulled out, and therefore it needs to be very specifically considered as part of the land use element. I pulled out my comments. I stood here on February 18th, 2020, on the last meeting of this committee, and most of it's about the jobs housing imbalance, and some of the issues are somewhat addressed by the SBCAG data, such as we need to consider Ventura commuters if we're talking regional. You can't draw a line and say, we don't see past the county line. And that SBCAG data allows us to look at that. But bottom line is, the jobs housing imbalance is not what you think it is in Carpinteria. We have more employed people in Carpinteria than there are jobs in Carpinteria. We are a net bedroom community. And the state is forcing us to plan for a significant amount more housing. We will be even more of a bedroom community for Santa Barbara and Goleta. We need to recognize that, and in our land use element, we need to consider the data, consider what we know, and consider how do we make the right decisions by enabling the truly affordable housing, not even moderate income housing, but truly affordable housing for low income, very low income. How do we get there, not just as 10 or 20% of any project, but almost all of any project? And that is driven by vehicle miles traveled. Thank you.
Thank you. Another speaker slip from Amrita Salm. Welcome again, Amrita.
Thank you. I remember discussing this several years ago when they were talking about adding the healthy community element to the community plan. And I think one correction that could be added where the sentence is topics include recreation and coastal access, active transportation, healthy food systems, healthcare services, community connection, and air quality, rather than just saying health care services. Health needs to be defined and include mental health or mental wellness, if you prefer that word. But that was what we discussed several years ago when it was brought up, and I think it's very important. We're not just talking about somebody's body, but their state of mind or, their connection with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public like to make a comment, have a question, have an answer?
Have a clue?
We do have some Zoom speakers if we.
All right, so let's roll them out.
Okay, first up we have Patrick O'Connor again.
Yeah, hi again. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First, I definitely agree with Rita and Mike on the comments about by the residents and for the residents, to abbreviate. The second comment I would make is to reiterate the notion of the objective review that was commented about several times. I think that's the purpose of that committee, the Development Review Committee, is to create objective review criteria. So that committee needs to be active. I think there's another.
Mr. O'Connor, your mic was garbled for a second there.
Sorry, I'm outside. I'm traveling. Forgive me. The other 2 points I'd like to make, and I think there's a couple of elephants in the room. One is about legal and illegal nonconformances. When we speak about the character of the city, I think we need to have something that has a plan towards dealing over time, and a reasonable plan dealing over time nonconformances. And then the last thing I would point out is I didn't hear anything mentioned about the seals. We need something in the general plan that deals with how we treat the seals over time. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up we have somebody with the Zoom name Owner.
Hello.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Am I on mic? This is Gail Marshall. Sorry, I didn't note that. I think I might be the one that you're talking about.
Okay.
Is that right? Sorry.
I don't know. Hi, Gail.
I forgot to go in and change that again. Yes, I felt strongly that I needed to add my voice tonight since I've been very vocal about updating the general plan for a number of years now. I'm so happy that we're moving forward on this project, and I want to thank everyone responsible for providing the funding and the manpower to get this moving along. And the other thing I had noted as you were talking is thing that has already been mentioned, and that is that the way the city has changed since 2020, that is responding to unfunded mandates from Sacramento and how we can deal with those in the future. All right, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gail.
Owner.
Okay, and it looks like Patrick O'Connor still has his hand raised. Patrick, did you have an additional comment or, oh, nope, he's good. Okay, there's nobody else on Zoom.
Okay, thanks, Megan. All right. I guess we're going to confirm our next meeting is April 15th.
Yes,
Is
thank
that
you.
good for?
Yes,
for
we're
everybody?
hoping to have some more content for you by then. We are finishing up the safety element and the noise element, and would like to release those for your review as administrative drafts. And we will also probably report back on these comments that we've heard from you tonight.
Okay. Very good.
And Mayor Clark, we'd certainly welcome any additional comments that your committee has on the topics that we discussed tonight, including the introductory chapter, if there's anything else from your committee.
Okay.
Wasn't sure if there's more deliberations coming. It looked like there's a little bit of uncertainty.
Well, no, we can feed those into you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, how do we give them to you? Now?
How about email?
Yeah, email, okay. Because I have to think about some things. And when's the next meeting?
April 15th,
Isn't that a,
2024.
isn't that a famous
Have your
day?
taxes done, Jane?
Yes, they are done. Okay, thank you.
So, Nick, can you describe the public outreach, what it looks like and how people can get involved?
Through the chair, Councilmember Lee, we don't yet have the public outreach plan going forward fully developed, but I think we intend to set up a couple of workshops, community-type workshops on focused areas. That was one of the things that we were looking for some feedback from your committee on is, are there certain topics or issues related to this general plan update that you think would be a good issue area to zero in on and to get community input on. We're going to continue to host these monthly meetings with your committee as we have items ready. That's another way that we hope to do public engagement. We'll look to leverage the city's social media channels to help engage the public as well. But we haven't really kind of got all the nuts and bolts put together yet for what the public outreach effort will be going forward. But I think we're going to be bringing that to you at one of the future meetings here to share and to get some input on to help us pin that down and get going on it.
So I'd say, go ahead.
Thank you. One suggestion is design guidelines. I think having input about what kind of design do we want to bring forward with businesses and our downtown T. In Santa Barbara, they have their Pearl Chase Foundation that always give their opinions about all developments, so something like that would be helpful.
That's good feedback, and that actually ties in, I think, pretty closely to something that Patrick O'Connor had mentioned earlier tonight when he was referring to the Design Review Committee. So you might recall back from, probably pre-COVID as well.
Yes.
Your council created another ad hoc committee made up of members of the council, the Planning Commission, and the ARB called the Design Review Committee. And their initial charge was to help craft objective design standards for the downtown T. And so in those intervening years, it's actually something that the city staff obtained a grant for and got help from a local architectural firm to prepare some design standards. And that grant funding ran out just at the end of last year, and we have kind of what I'd call a rough administrative draft that we want to clean up a little bit and then present to the Design Review Committee here sometime in the near future. Get some feedback from that committee and go back and make some refinements. We're not really happy with it yet, but it's kind of where we ended up with when we ran out of funding. So we figured this is a good opportunity to share with you what we have, get some direction from this Design Review Committee and try to push that effort forward. That was kind of the first task that the Design Review Committee had, was helping to develop those objective design standards for the downtown T, and then hopefully from there kind of leapfrog that effort into other neighborhoods or other districts of the city. Going through some of the neighborhood design guidelines and those kinds of things. But the initial focus was for our downtown kind of mixed-use district.
What I was going to say in terms of public outreach is that, a lot of these, all these elements are really good, but this is a land use kind of town. I mean, that's what most people out here are interested in. And so I think that's something that needs to be a highlight, in the public participation part.
Al, could I suggest that
No.
if you're going to do public meetings, that they not just be at our public schools? There are many children in this town who don't go to school at CUSD. They go to private schools or they go to schools in Santa Barbara. And also, of course, outreaching to the senior group in town that now has a director. That would be a good place to get input from seniors. Thank you.
Nick, how do you plan to reach out to the Hispanic community? Is there a plan also to address that?
Councilmember Lee, that'll be part of the public outreach plan that we hope to bring back to you, but I don't have any of the specifics of what our strategies will be at this time.
You?
All right, well, if there's nothing more, we'll adjourn.
Oh, wait, one more question.
There is something more? Okay.
What about the Chevron property? Are we going to be land using the hell out of that one too?
Commissioner Benefield, you may recall, this is going back several years, but as part of, kind of the contemplated changes to the land use map, one of the focus areas that we were looking at was thinking about what the future reuse of the Chevron property could be. I think at the time, the discussion was transitioning to a planned unit development land use designation, which is, fairly flexible, I suppose, and that it gives us some options there to accommodate housing, but other needs as well, whether it's commercial or institutional, educational, open space, what have you. That could be something that we want to revisit. It's been a few years, the circumstances have changed, so this is that opportunity before we get too much farther down the road here to take another look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Come again.
Yeah.